Welcome to the first part of our Mastering FacilityWare series of videos. A set of videos that are designed to help you make the most of your FacilityWare labeling software and your SafetyPro printer. In this first video, getting started, we're going to look at how the installation of FacilityWare goes, the icons that are placed on the desktop, basically what they do. We're going to talk about creating templates, creating a label from scratch, as well as making or using pre-made labels that come with FacilityWare. Within FacilityWare, we'll talk about the toolbox and what that is. And then we'll go through the basics of making a label, text boxes, images, aligning objects, everything you might need to know to use FacilityWare to make a basic label. After that, we'll look at printing and saving and how to open up files that you've created with FacilityWare. And then at any point during, after, if this video doesn't answer all your questions, you can always give us a call at 877-762-9280. So let's start out first by looking at what SafetyPro does after you install it. So when you install SafetyPro, it's going to drop two icons on your desktop. This blue one is just plain Jane FacilityWare. It's the basic program. This red and blue one is FacilityWare Tablet. Now this, I'm going to go ahead and open it up so I can show you the one difference with this piece of software. The only difference with FacilityWare Tablet is that you get these giant green dots around everything. Now the purpose for these are called handles, and they let you resize and move things around. The reason for the giant handles on the tablet edition is so that you can click on these with your finger if you happen to be using FacilityWare from a tablet with a touch screen. For most people, they won't ever need to do that, but that's what that red and blue icon is for. For most of us, we're going to use this blue one. So I'll go ahead and double click on this one now to start FacilityWare. And let's look first at templates. Now you're going to notice right away that you've got a pre-made button at the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and click this to show you what it does. It's going to open up a folder with a list of categories, and in these categories you have different pre-made label templates. So let's go ahead and open up an arc flash label, for example. The arc flash has a couple different types, so we're just going to go into basic arc flash labels. And I'm going to choose one of these. And you see this is a pre-made template. Now, like I said, there's a whole bunch of pre-made templates in there that you can choose from. And they're all kind of categorized, see? This is a great way to make a quick label, or if you want to modify these, you can. And you'll actually be able to do that once you learn how to use FacilityWare. Those pre-made labels will become more useful to you. So let's start over and look at how you work with your own templates. So let's start FacilityWare. Anytime you start FacilityWare, it's going to bring up this dialog that says Select Template. And there's really only three things you have to do here. You got to make sure your material type is set, your label size is set, and your printer is set to your SafetyPro. So I'm going to go ahead and set my material type. Let's say I have 4-inch material loaded into my printer right now. And then I'm going to choose a label size to start with. Now keep in mind, you can change this label size while you're working on your label, but you want to start with something that's at least close to what you think you will need. So I'm going to make a 4x6 label here. The printer is already selected, so I'm going to hit the Create button at the bottom. That starts you out with a blank 4x6 label. You can see you've got rulers on the top and the side. I'm going to use the plus magnifier and the minus magnifier to zoom in and out of my label. I like to have a little bit of gray space around it to work with it. Now you'll see on the label here also that you've got these dotted lines. If you go up to the view menu, you can turn that grid on and off, and you can also turn snap to grid on and off. Now, especially when you're working with small labels, you want that snap to grid off. You can turn them off right here in the toolbar as well. If I hover my mouse over there, that's snap to grid, that's display grid. I'm going to turn them both off so you can see there's the label with just white. I like seeing the grid, I just don't like having to snap to it. So I'm just going to turn off snap to grid. You can also turn it off up here in the view menu. You can see that it's off now. And then we can get started. Now we've gone through the process of making our default template here, and we've got a blank label on our screen. So let's look at the next part, which is the toolbox. So on the left-hand side of your label, you see this area listed as Toolbox. And inside it, you have all the tools you can use to make a label. There's a lot of different things in there. There's these little plus symbols that you open up the folders and close them if you want. But everything you need to make a label is right over here in this toolbox. Now the way it works, it's all drag and drop. So we're going to start with a text object. I'm going to start with a stretchable text. Find the one labeled stretchable text, click it, drag it, and drop it on your label. Okay. Once it's on your label, you'll see the green dots around it. You can double click on it to bring up the properties. In a text box, this is where you would type in your text. You can type in a single word, a sentence, or you can even type in a paragraph here. Anything you want, you can type that in here. For now, we're going to go ahead and make an example label. We'll make a pinch point label. So we're going to type in our text, and I'm actually going to highlight this and change my font because I want it to be a little darker. I'm going to choose Arial Black. Notice that I'm not adjusting the font size here, and I'll show you why. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to use these green dots since this is a stretchable text object, and I'm going to stretch it out. Let's say I want it about that big. That's how you make a text box. So now we have one text box on our label. Let's move on to looking at how you use images. So here under pictograms, you have images, sign headers, and arrows. I'm going to start with the image object, click it, drag it, and drop it on my label. That'll bring up this dialog. You choose the folder that goes with your operating system, and then you'll get maybe 20-30 categories in here. And there's about 2,500 labeling images built into FacilityWare. So I'm going to go to Warning International. And what you need to know with the images is that you've got these preview files. So you're going to find the preview that you like. Let's say here's a pinch point preview that I like. And then you see how the name is Warning 010, Warning 10, dash preview. Choose the file right next to it that has the same name. So this is Warning 010 here. I'm going to choose that one right next to it and hit open. If you choose the preview, let me show you what happens. So I'm going to go to the same category here, Warning International. And I'm going to choose the preview file. If I accidentally choose that, you see it's going to say the word preview on your label. It's actually going to be lower resolution also. It doesn't scale well. So if you accidentally do that, you can just hit the delete key, or you can hit this red X at the top in your toolbar. Now these image objects, they'll have the green dots around them as well, so you can stretch them and move them out. You can also click them and move them around. That's the same is true for any object. Alright, so now we've got a label with an image and some text. I'm going to put a sign header on here now. Now, let's say I was going to print this label onto our TS4AF label stock, which has a 1-inch orange stripe at the top. So I would choose a sign header, click it, drag it, and drop it on my label. I'm going to choose English because that's what I want this one to be in. And for a warning label with the orange stripe, pre-printed orange stripe, I'm going to want a black on white like this. That way it turns out as black on orange. Notice how this one is labeled 008, and I'm choosing the one right next to it that's labeled 008, just like with the other images. Okay, you got the green dots, and I'm going to stretch that. Now, because I know I have a 1-inch orange stripe on my label, see over here in the ruler with this 1, when I move my mouse, that red line shows me where I'm at. So here I can see that my warning is definitely above that 1-inch mark. So that's going to fit just fine. Now let's put some other text on our label. I'll go ahead and find just the regular text box, this one here, click it and drag it and drop it. Unlike the stretchable text, this one I can create a box as large as I want, and the text will remain the size that I set it at. So now I'm going to put in my text. I'm going to make a paragraph for this one. I'm just making something up as I go here. Now I don't exactly like how that looks, so I'm going to double click this again, and I'm going to change my font size manually here. Make it a little bigger. Maybe I'll make it bold. Still using Arial for the font. Still don't like the way that looks. I'm going to double click it again, and I'm going to center it. Okay? So now that's centered. I can adjust my box size. Notice also when I adjust my box, it will adjust the text to fit in that box. So let's say I want it like this. That looks just fine there. And I can position it where I want it. Actually, I'm going to shrink this image down just a little bit and move these both up. Now it's nice, but I want to add some lines just to highlight that text a little more. Now what I'm doing here is just making a generic label. You could call this an OSHA compliant label. Depending on what standards you're using, the type of label you create, you have some restrictions on your creativity. But for an OSHA compliant label, it's not going to be too restrictive. So I'm going to create some lines here. Now let's say I've made this line and I want to make one exactly like it. Well, I can right click on it, copy it, right click down here, paste. Shortcut keys work as well for that. Okay. Now I'm purposefully going to make these askew. These are not going to be lined up, and I'll show you why in a minute. We'll learn how to use the alignment tools. Okay, now this is a pretty good label, but this is the type of label you can buy from a catalog. Part of the point of having your own custom label printer is to be able to print things that you need for your company. So keep in mind when you're making your labels, don't be afraid to put in custom information that's specific to your company. You can even put in your company logo, company name, all sorts of things. But let's just say this machine, this equipment is managed by Bill at extension 341, and he needs to be called for maintenance. So we're including that on the label. All right, now we've got a pretty nice label. You can see we've got several objects. We've got 3 text objects, 2 images, one's a sign header, and 2 lines. So you've got a pretty decent looking label here, but it's not aligned. Now I could line these up manually and get it pretty good, but we can also use the alignment tool. So now that we've looked at all the aspects of making a label, let's look at the alignment tools. Now you notice when you click on one of these items, let's click on this one, it highlights it with these green dots around it. And some alignment tools become available up in the menu. If you hover over each of those, you'll see what each of them is. Now I'm going to click Align to Label Center. And I've just centered this particular object. I can do that again with this one. Center. Now these ones, though, I don't want to center them to the label. I want to center them with each other. So what I can do is this. I can hold the Control key on my keyboard and click multiple objects. That will highlight multiple objects. One way to do it. Another way to do it is to draw a box around it with your mouse. Just like that. Now these other alignment tools become available. I can align objects to the left, and see they've all been aligned with each other to the left. Now I can move them together as well, and they're all aligned. Okay, but you notice the spacing isn't equidistant between these 3 objects. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one right here, space evenly, and I can control the exact amount of space I want between each object. That's not quite enough. So I'm going to add a little more, see if it's better. Nah, still not what I'm looking for. That looks pretty good. Now you do notice that it's aligning the actual box. So see how my box is bigger than my text? I got to tighten that up a little bit. Highlight these again. See? Now they're all aligned properly. Now that one's looking pretty good, but let's see, let's center this one. Let me show you this other part one more time. Let's make these askew so you understand this other alignment tool. If I'm working with these 3 objects, I can align them on the right edge, I can align them on the left edge using this tool right here or this tool right here. Either way, since these are about the same width, it's going to be about the same. Now let's say I wanted to line this and this line so that they're on the same top edge. I'll click this one and then the line and hit this Align Objects to the top. See, that moved my image so it's aligned at the top level with this. So I encourage you to just play with that alignment, see what you can get, and don't be shy to use those alignment tools. It helps you make a much cleaner label. And that's pretty much all you need to know to make a label in FacilityWare. Everything in this left-hand box works the same way. It's all just drag and drop and double-click. If you wanted a barcode, that's all you do. You just drag it and drop it on your label. If you don't want an object, you hit your delete key on your keyboard, or you can hit this red X at the top. That gets rid of an object. If you want to copy an object, you can right-click on it. And if you need to change an object, you can just double-click on it to get its properties. There's actually quite a few different properties in there: rotation, different type of text boxes, your size, your font, anything you might need. And that's pretty much the basics of making a label. Once you've made a label that you like, you can go up to File and Save As. Save it somewhere where it's easy to find. A lot of people put things in their Documents folder. A lot of people put things on their desktop. On this particular machine, it's just for making these mastering videos, so we're going to save it on our desktop here in case we need to use it in a later video. Call it Pinch Point and hit Save. Then we can close FacilityWare. Now that I've got it saved, I can either open it up by double-clicking on it directly, or I can go into FacilityWare, hit Escape on Select a Template, and it should show up in my recent files here, or I can just hit File, Open, and browse to it. Just like any other program, real simple, real easy. Printing is also really easy. Obviously, you hit File, Print. Biggest thing you need to do is make sure that your printer is selected. And that's all there is to it. In this series, we're going to learn a few other things about how to use FacilityWare, including how to use FacilityWare with a spreadsheet and how to do some more advanced labeling styles and types. But if you have any questions that aren't answered in this video or the others, definitely give us a call at 877-762-9280.